Live now is the Assistant Defence Minister Matt Thistlethwaite. Matt, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So we'll stay on Gaza before we go into other news. Are you going to follow Sweden and reinstate funding for UNRWA in Gaza?
Well, the government decided to temporarily pause funding for UNRWA because there were allegations that some of their staff were involved in the attacks on innocent civilians in Israel on October 7. And of course, Australia cannot be involved in funding organisations that have members involved in terrorist activity. So there's an investigation going on into that, and we'll make a decision once that investigation is completed.
So that's not something that you're going to change tact anytime soon on?
Well, we need to see what the outcome of the investigation is, Pete. As I said, we can't be involved in funding organisations that have been involved in terrorist activities.
Sure.
And that's not confined to this particular conflict. It goes to other areas throughout the world as well. The Australian people, the taxpayers, expect that if we're going to be funding aid organisations, that funding is used for the purposes for which the aid organisation was established.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, is this a decision that you make on your own, though, or do you have to wait for other countries to take a lead on?
It's a decision that Australia makes based on the policies that we have in place regarding how we distribute foreign aid. We're no doubt aware of the decisions that are being made by other nations, and certainly the United States announced on the weekend that they will be constructing a temporary wharf in Gaza to ensure that food distributions can be made. Obviously, we support actions such as that. No one wants to see the shocking scenes of children starving, people going without food. But we need to make sure that we're funding organisations that comply by the rules.
Yep, OK. Jim Chalmers to announce a series of nuisance tariff cuts today, Matt. It's going to save businesses roughly about $30 million a year, which doesn't really sound like that much. So why bother?
Well, for the nuisance value of it, you've got tariffs on imported products that go from chopsticks all the way up to white goods like dishwashers and fridges. And their compliance costs for Australian businesses, and they don't raise all that much revenue, to be honest. And we know that when we remove tariffs, that Australian businesses become more competitive. They're much more attuned to market signals. They operate more efficiently. And given that these tariffs aren't raising much revenue, they're certainly not protecting Australian workers' jobs or consumers' interests. We think that it's the responsible thing to remove them and make sure that we're reducing those compliance costs for businesses, and hopefully some of those reductions in compliance costs will be passed on to consumers who are no tough at the moment with cost of living.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you. I mean, does this, using those examples that you just outlined, does this mean the cost of a chopstick or a fridge is going to get cheaper?
Well, hopefully it will. Some of those compliance costs will be reduced. Obviously, on smaller products, you're probably not going to notice it.
Like 1 cent,
something as big as a fridge, hopefully you will notice it. And that's why the government's acting.
Does this undercut the value of existing trade agreements?
No, it's in line with what we achieve through existing trade agreements, both multilaterally and through bilateral trade agreements. We've seen over, the past 40 years, really, that successive Australian governments have been reducing tariffs on imported products through those trade agreements. And similarly, Australian exports to those countries have tariffs in those countries removed. And it's all about ensuring that the system operates more efficiently and effectively, and that there's more competition because businesses are subject to market decisions and they're not standing behind protection walls to try and, continue into the future. So it's all about sending market signals, reducing costs for consumers, and ultimately making Australian business more competitive.
Yeah, and presumably a lot of these products, they come from China. I mean, does anything change at that end?
Well, we have a free trade agreement with China, and through that process, and that was negotiated by the previous government. Through that process, there's a reduction in tariffs both ways on goods exported from Australia, and we export a lot to China. It's our largest trading partner, and similarly on products that they import into Australia. So they can be win-wins for both countries and for consumers in both countries.
All right, Matt Thistlethwaite, good to see you. We'll chat to you again soon.